Headline News, I am David Goodnow. The road to Middle East peace takes an unlikely detour for Secretary of State George Shultz. Saturday, he meets with two Palestinians linked to the PLO. Israel says it has, quote, grave and serious concerns about that meeting. Jerusalem also appears at odds with the United States over deployment of new Chinese missiles in Saudi Arabia. Francis Harden has the story.
During the Secretary of State's last trip to the Middle East, Palestinians boycotted a meeting with him because of objections by the Palestine Liberation Organization. Now, however, with the blessing of PLO leader Yasser Arafat, two prominent Palestine Americans will meet with George Shultz at the State Department. Professors Edward Said of Columbia University and Abu Lagoud of Northwestern are coming at the Secretary's invitation.
He will discuss the Palestinian point of view. We said that they had an intimate knowledge of Middle Eastern politics.
Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir says the meeting violates a U.S. commitment to Israel. The Israeli ambassador to the U.S. has also protested. A former Secretary of State sums up that commitment.
The United States should not have diplomatic talks with the PLO unless the PLO recognizes the State of Israel.
In fact, federal law prohibits meetings between U.S. officials and the PLO. The official State Department view is that the men are simply members of the Palestine National Council and American citizens. But the PNC is the legislative arm of the Palestine Liberation Organization. One administration source admits the State Department is trying to have it both ways by setting up contacts with the PLO without violating the law. Tensions are also rising between the U.S. and both Israel and Saudi Arabia because of Chinese missiles purchased by the Saudis. According to the administration, recently Israel has been conducting bombing practice raids. That's prompted concerns about a preemptive strike, such as Israel's raid in 1981 against an Iraqi nuclear reactor.
We would be totally opposed to any such thing and hope that they're not considering any such act.
The Secretary of State could be going to the Middle East in 2 weeks. He's expected to make a decision this weekend following his meeting with the Palestinians and a briefing by Special Envoy Philip Habib, who has just returned from the region. Francis Harden, CNN, the State Department.
In the occupied West Bank, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 2 Arabs when a mob attacked an army-occupied school. 13 Arabs were wounded as they raided that school, and 4 more Arabs were wounded when troops fired on rock-throwing protesters in Hebron. The Senate wants to tell Manuel Noriega he's lost all U.S. support, so the chamber voted unanimously Friday in a non-binding resolution to urge the president to put more economic pressure on Panama. The cash crisis in Panama left Noriega unable to pay his military Friday. Opposition leaders hope unpaid soldiers will help damage internal support for the regime. The 5-day national strike has kept stores closed all week. A decree Friday threatened to take away commercial licenses, any business that offers goods and services to the public, if the stores remain closed. The 3,200 American troops in Honduras will start arriving home Monday, and the families they left behind last week are preparing the way. Wives of soldiers at California's Fort Ord are putting up yellow ribbons in anticipation of their loved ones' return. The situation remains quiet along the Honduran-Nicaraguan border, but the diplomatic war is heating up. Honduras has launched a protest with the United States over reported comments that U.S. troops were sent south only to protect the Contras. Lucia Newman is in Honduras.
As U.S. troops continued war games with Honduran soldiers, the government here protested to the United States for allegedly saying that troops were airlifted to Honduras last week to protect Contra rebels from a Nicaraguan offensive. Protest note delivered at the U.S. Embassy here follows a wire service report from Washington, quoting Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci as saying that the troop deployment was intended to give moral support to the Contras. The alleged U.S. statement has embarrassed and angered Foreign Minister Lopez Contreras. He and the nation's defense minister told Congress here Wednesday that they requested the airlift only to protect Honduras from a Sandinista incursion. The only comment from embassy officials here is that they've received the Hondurans' letter of protest and that they'll answer in due course through an appropriate channel. Nicaragua's ambassador claims both Honduras and the U.S. gave more than just moral support to the Contras during last week's border offensive.
In the Aguacate military base, there are 800 injured Contras in a hospital that was already there, and 2 warehouses that have been converted into clinics. The Contras were transported there by Contra helicopters and U.S. helicopters manned by American pilots.
A conservative opposition senator in Honduras also told CNN that there were wounded Contras at the Aguacate base. despite denials from military officials here, who would not allow us inside the compound. Honduras, meanwhile, accused the Sandinistas of carrying out 2 more border incursions on Tuesday. As for the 3,200 U.S. troops, they'll start leaving on Monday. But Congress has already sent 3 auditors from the General Accounting Office to make sure that when they depart, they don't leave any of their supplies behind for the Contras. Lucia Newman, CNN, Tegucigalpa.
Robert Chambers is spending what might be his last night of freedom for the next 15 years. He surrenders to authorities Saturday morning. Friday, in a New York court, he pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of first-degree manslaughter in the so-called Preppy murder trial. Chambers had admitted to strangling fellow student Jennifer Levin in Central Park in 1986. The 21-year-old had said her death was an accident during rough sex, but Friday Chambers admitted he meant to cause her injury. Levin's mother says she's glad the trial has shown Chambers is not the, quote, lily white altar boy he appeared to be. But Ellen Levin says she's glad it's over.
I'm speaking for all of us when I say that I don't think that we could have withstood another trial and the tensions and problems that went on for another year and a half. It would have been too much for everyone concerned.
Chambers will be sentenced April 15th. Minimum sentence is 5 years. President Reagan apparently thinks former White House aides Oliver North and John Poindexter will come out of the Iran-Contra trial unscathed. Friday, Mr. Reagan told a group of students he still thinks Ollie North is a hero. And he added he believes the 4 men under criminal indictment in the scandal will be found innocent. Senator Alan Cranston of California criticized the president, calling his remarks highly inappropriate. He says such statements could lead to a miscarriage of justice. There's a lot of talking going on in Michigan, and most of it is about politics. Saturday, the Wolverine State holds its Democratic caucuses. 138 delegates are up for grabs there. Michael Dukakis and Jesse Jackson are leading the polls, Richard Gebhardt trailing badly. But the Missouri congressman is predicting a Michigan miracle. GOP presidential hopeful Bob Dole's taking a closer look at his political future. Friday, he conceded it's a foregone conclusion that he cannot win the Republican nomination over frontrunner George Bush. Bush is in Colorado campaigning for its April 4th caucuses, and Frank says no reports from Denver.
It's been there for a while, but Bob Dole admits he now sees the handwriting on the wall.
And now it appears there may be a clear front runner. And now is the time for all of us, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, start zeroing in. Because this is going to be a tough campaign. It's going to be a close race. We need to keep a Republican in the White House. That's where I'm coming from. And if it can't be me, it'll be George Bush.
In a speech to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Dole says it's now a foregone conclusion that he cannot win the nomination. Vice President Bush, going through the motions of campaigning for Colorado's April 4th caucuses, says he's taking nothing for granted despite Dole's comments.
Well, I think I better stay out of that and just keep working like we are here today, like we will be in California tomorrow, and like I'm going to be working on Monday in Wisconsin and was yesterday in Connecticut.
But the pre-convention activities appear all but irrelevant for Bush. The focus shifts to the fall. He wants to turn the time till then to his advantage.
There are states that he's promised to go to that are going to have primary contests. He's going to continue to campaign. He wants to continue to take his message and his themes state to state.
I want to be a president because I appreciate the values that we're based on.
The idea is also to get a head start on pulling the party together, broadening its electoral base.
You are voting? Oh, how nice. I wish you were 18.
Playing up the experience gap between Bush and the Democratic rivals. And Bush now has the luxury of concentrating his fire on the Democrats while they're still fighting among themselves.
The country does not want to swing left to that gloom and doom liberal Democrat philosophy, and we're not going to do it.
For now, however, Bush must try to maintain some excitement, some spontaneity, and some attention.
For George Bush right now, the urgency is not so much to get people to buy before their primaries or caucuses. It's to convince them to come back with their friends in the fall when the presidential sell-a-thon gets serious. Frank Sesno, CNN, Denver.
Representative James Howard of New Jersey died Friday in a Washington hospital. He'd suffered a heart attack while playing golf Thursday. The 60-year-old Howard was chairman of the House Public Works and Transportation Committee. And the dance world's mourning the loss of Robert Joffrey, founder of the world-famous Joffrey Ballet. A dance choreographer died Friday of a liver ailment in a New York hospital at age 57. Friends say Joffrey's personal vision will continue to live on in his ballet company. We'll be back.
You're watching Headline News on Channel 11.
This week on Masterpiece Theater.
Goodbye, my dearest. Goodbye, Peggotty. Thank you.
The tender warmth.
You deserve better, Dodie.
I love you. The comic delights.
What does it mean, Peggotty?
Life offers no choice but jail or death. I choose death.
The unforgettable characters of David Copperfield.
You dirty little ink blot, you.
I live in an humble abode, Master Copperfield, with my mother. She's a very humble person, too.
A classic tale of growing up. Charles Dickens' David Copperfield on Masterpiece Theater.
David Copperfield premieres Sunday at 9.
It's being called the largest drug bust in European history. Friday, police near Madrid, Spain, seized 880 pounds of cocaine worth an estimated $45 million and arrested 12 people. The cocaine was found hidden inside a warehouse. Authorities say the find may be linked to Colombia's Medellin drug cartel. The new mayor of Colombia's largest city will meet with New York Mayor Ed Koch last week to propose an anti-drug campaign. Mayor Andres Pastrana of Bogota says he wants to form mutual cooperation between, quote, the capital of consumption and the capital of production of cocaine. Koch has criticized Colombian cocaine production and demanded the United States cut aid to Colombia. A crackdown on illegal drugs entering the United States through Florida has driven traffickers north. Larry Lamont reports Georgia is fast becoming a drug hub.
Georgia's strategic location has made it a major transportation center for drug traffickers.
You have three major interstate highway systems running north-south through Georgia from Florida, so virtually all of the drugs that move across land coming up from South Florida come through Georgia at one point or another.
Drugs in increasing numbers are being flown in by private aircraft. Georgia is the farthest point north that most planes can fly from South America without refueling. And commercial airlines stopping at Atlanta's Hartsfield International Airport are often used by drug couriers. Lawmen have fought back with an impressive number of arrests in Georgia, almost 21,500 in 1986, more than 24,200 last year.
We are also able, through our drug task force, to put together, again, these complex indictments to go after the attorneys, the bankers, the real estate agents that are the real heart and soul, the skeleton as well, of the drug trafficking network.
17 drug indictments were returned in Atlanta Thursday against alleged members of a drug trafficking ring, including an attorney and a karate champion. But federal and state agencies admit they are still overwhelmed by the magnitude of the drug flow.
It is centered here in low-income housing projects that are high-income sources for vicious gangs out of Miami who deal in crack, a drug derived from cocaine.
The drug dealers from South Florida generally come into this area. Once they're here, they may identify a location to deal with, and they will recruit the young teenagers who live in the different areas. They will pay them a fee per day.
Teens in the projects are getting more money than they ever dreamed possible peddling drugs. But their dreams are becoming Georgia's nightmare. The well-organized crack gangs from Miami and Jamaica are bringing with them cold-blooded violence. Authorities say if they're not stopped, they will become America's new mafia. Larry Lamont, CNN, Atlanta.
A Long Island doctor looked out his office window Thursday to find his house rolling down the street. The house was on stilts because the doctor was planning to move the cottage himself. But a thief swiped the moving permits and tricked the police into giving him an escort. Well, the doctor ran out and got his house back, but the would-be house switcher escaped. It was 30 years ago that Whammo sold America the hula hoop, and the company marked the anniversary by wiggling its way to a world record. Ann McDermott has the story.
Remember when you liked to do the hula hoop?
Sure you remember. Think back to 1958. Whammo had just introduced the hula hoop, and it quickly became a worldwide sensation. Everybody hula hooped. Mom and Dad and even old Sparky got into the act. Hula hoops never really went away, but after that first big year, they were set aside for a time.
The company was sending out little sheets that told them how to drill holes in them so they could turn them into lawn sprinklers.
Now, 30 years later, time for another comeback. There is indeed a whole lot of shaking going on. At Disneyland, anyway, where more than 1,500 people celebrated the anniversary of the hula hoop by attempting a mass hula into the Guinness Book of World Records.
It used to be easier when I was about 10.
But for many, this was a brand new experience.
How do you like it?
Well, a lot of people had that experience.
Is it a little harder than you thought? Yeah.
Some, though, looked as though they'd been hula hooping all their lives.
I like it. It's a lot of exercise. You get a lot of body tone.
Well, some get more body tone than others, but that may well depend on technique and practice.
So how's it going? Fine.
Nobody said it was easy, just fun. And Whammo is counting on that as they attempt to revive the craze with hula hoops for the 80s.
It's gotta be a hula.
This year's sales goal, 4 million hula hoops, and the firm thinks it'll happen as former hoopsters, parents now, buy their old toys for their new kids. You might say the hula hoop has come full circle. Ann McDermott, CNN, Anaheim, California.
Headline Sports is next.
Headline news on WTTW will continue.
The psychologist Carl Jung knew the human heart. Evil, he said, needs to be pondered just as much as good, for our knowledge of good and evil has dwindled with our mounting knowledge and experience. How are we to understand and cope with the evil invoked in the 20th century? When some noted historians, philosophers, and artists of our time gathered to consider this question, they found themselves witnessing to the affirming power of the human spirit. I'm Bill Moyers. Join me for a unique opportunity to see how men and women like poet Maya Angelou, former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, Holocaust scholar Raoul Hilberg, writer Philip Halley, and Dr. Samuel Proctor, and others, have dealt personally with the evil they faced within their own experience. It's 90 minutes of compelling testimony on public television.
The Concept of Evil in the 20th Century, Monday at 9.
Next on Nova, a breakthrough in a little-known field could revolutionize the way we use energy.
It's an opportunity that maybe comes around once in every scientist's career or never comes around in your career. And to be in the right place at the right time, and maybe want to go for it.
At a time when the U.S. is losing technological ground to Japan, the stakes are high. The race for the superconductor. That's next time on Nova.
Watch Nova Tuesday at 8.
Next on Frontline, an American family in search of the new Russia.
We are talking now about the deep, fundamental changes in the society.
Gorbachev promises reforms, but have things really changed?
The level of discourse has risen to a new level, but the ground rules are basically still the same.
Watch Back in the USSR on Frontline.
The Soviet Union Revisited, Tuesday at 9.
49 minutes after the hour, the latest now from Headline Sports.
I'm Tom West with Headline Sports. The Big Ten took a beating Friday night. Its last three teams bowing out of the NCAA tournament. At the Midwest Regional in the Pontiac Silverdome, Mitch Richmond scored 27 to trigger Kansas State's 73-70 upset of Purdue. That sets up the Wildcats' fourth meeting this season against state rival Kansas. Danny Manning manhandled Vanderbilt for 38 points as the Jayhawks eliminated the Commodores 77-64 to reach Sunday's regional final. Out west, the action was in Seattle's Kingdome. Arizona behind 25 points from Sean Elliott blew out Big Ten foe Iowa in the second half on the way to a 99-79 victory. In the regional final, the Wildcats will meet North Carolina. Only up by a point at the half, the Tar Heels kept Michigan's high-scoring offense from operating and used their inside game of Scott Williams with 19 and J.R. Reed with 18 to knock off the Wolverines 78-69. In the NBA, Detroit's 7-game winning streak was snapped at San Antonio. Ed Neely's hook shot rattled in at the buzzer for a 107-106 win. It was Neely's only basket of the game. He had double reason to celebrate since he played his college ball for Kansas State. Boston was blowing out Philadelphia by 30 in the third quarter, but collapsed in the final period, only scoring 9 points, and the 76ers took advantage, pulling out a 97-93 decision. The Lakers also suffered a rare defeat at home. Michael Adams' jumper beat the buzzer and gave Denver a 120-119 victory. The Nuggets have won 4 in a row. Elsewhere, it was the Bulls victorious in overtime on Charles Oakley's tip-in. Indiana nipped the New Jersey Nets. Dallas downed Portland, and it was the Clippers over Golden State. In the NHL, New Jersey tied Buffalo. Pittsburgh ended Montreal's 15-game unbeaten streak. Washington topped Philadelphia, and Vancouver edged Chicago. Tom West, Headline Sports.
In the headlines, in a plea bargain, Robert Chambers pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of first-degree manslaughter in the so-called Preppy murder case. He was charged with killing Jennifer Levin during rough sex. Senator Bob Dole is conceding that it's a foregone conclusion that Vice President George Bush will win the Republican presidential nomination. And despite Israeli objections, Secretary of State Schultz says he'll meet tomorrow with 2 American Palestinians to discuss his Middle East peace plan. With the headlines, I'm Micah Johnson.
Checking Saturday's weather map, heavy rain will pour on Washington and surrounding parts of the Northwest. Snow will fall over the western half of the Great Lakes region, and those on the East Coast had better cancel any picnic plans for the weekend. Rain will pelt the coast from Maine to Florida and will spill over to the eastern Gulf Coast. Saturday's highs, 20s, 30s, and 40s will chill the northern plain states. 50s are predicted for New England and the Pacific Northwest. More news after this.
More headline news in a minute, here on 11.
Georgia O'Keeffe and the New Mexico desert shared a creative bond that was unique in the history of 20th century art. Get a rare glimpse into the private life of this American master.
Georgia O'Keeffe, Sunday at 8.
Tonight, tonight.
Hear the singers who sang the songs that stopped the biggest shows on Broadway. Pearl Bailey, Jerry Orbach, Larry Kurt, Pamela Myers, Judy Kuhn, and special guest composer Jerry Herman. Join your hosts, President and Mrs. Reagan, and Master of Ceremonies Marvin Hamlisch, for a salute to Broadway showstoppers on In Performance at the White House.
A salute to Broadway, Wednesday at 8.
Japan, coming to Channel 11 in April.
The falling dollar has planted a seed of prosperity for the agriculture industry. Many farmers now have the dollars and cents to buy heavy equipment that is far from dirt cheap. Cynthia Rogers reports.
Benucci bought this brand new tractor and 2 new combines for his Princeton, Illinois farm, and he wants to buy more.
We have hopes to get another combine, a little bigger combine that we'll use solely for beans.
After 6 years of holding off buying new equipment and patching up the old, farmers are loosening their purse strings.
You don't want to farm with junk. I mean, we've got a lot to do, and we've got to keep up.
So Rosenwinkel bought a new combine and a pickup truck for his 4,000-acre Illinois farm. Farm equipment sales surged in the final 3 months of last year. Dealers feared it might not last. But so far this year, sales of tractors are up 26% and large combines up over 200%.
Our business has turned around to the point where we have acquired another dealership just in the last 30 days.
farmers have more cash on hand. According to the Agriculture Department, farm debt fell to $152 billion last year from the high of $206 billion in 1983. It's expected to fall another $4 billion this year. At the same time, farm income is running at record highs, $57 billion last year and $56 billion forecast for this year. But the outlook is still uncertain and could change based on such factors as the weather, crop conditions, and the U.S. dollar. Like many farmers, Armin Kaler is cautious.
I haven't made up my mind one way or another if I'm to buy one yet or not.
Still, most analysts say it will be a good year for farm equipment manufacturers such as John Deere and are forecasting earnings of $3 a share for the company, a reversal from last year's loss. Cynthia Rogers, CNN Business News, Chicago.
Well, Sasha the tiger won't be able to live with her owners anymore. A judge ruled Friday that the Pintos of Darien, Connecticut must give up their pet due to a state law against owning dangerous animals. Sasha is blind and epileptic. That, say the Pintos, means she poses no threat to the neighbors. They say her condition makes her unable to live in a zoo where the feline is staying now. So folks in New South Wales, Australia can't bear to see sickly koalas. Peter Wilkinson reports they've gone out on a limb to help the cuddly critters recover.
7:30 a.m. Breakfast time at Port Macquarie's intensive care unit for koalas.
How's our little patient today?
A lot better than when we first brought him in. Here's Lucky with koala conjunctivitis.
You're right, Lucky.
And lucky to be alive. Then there's Stonewall, just 7 months old.
He was found on the edge of the road. His mother couldn't be found anywhere, and we seem to think he's got brain damage.
That's 5 koalas now receiving intensive care in this house. And across town, they actually have a koala hospital.
Well, this is our leaf room. We get the leaves delivered every couple of days, as you can see, nice and fresh.
It's all paid for and built by the locals of Port Macquarie.
We're very proud of that. My word, we are.
Koalas can't get intensive care here, but this girl no longer needs that.
She's a victim of a car accident and was very, very close to death for many, many weeks.
The experts tell us koalas are fast becoming an animal in danger of extinction. With men like David rescuing fellas like Packer, that's less of a risk here than elsewhere.
That's our report for this half hour. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Goodnow. Around the world in 30 minutes. This is Headline News.